In this lecture, I am going to give an introduction to post-colonial literature. Post-colonial literature is a separate paper in your syllabus, and there are different poems, short stories, novels and drama related to the post-colonial theory included in your syllabus. So this is an overall introduction to post-colonialism, which is a very important trend in literary criticism. Here I am going to give you a very brief working introduction. Normally, post-colonial theory is a wide range of ideas, and it would take a series of lectures in order to complete the whole concept of post-colonial theory. But I am giving you a very brief introduction that will help you to understand the basic features of post-colonialism through this video. So before understanding what is post-colonial literature and what is post-colonialism, you need to understand what is colonization, what is decolonization, and then coming to post-colonial. Colonialism, we are all aware that during the Renaissance, various European countries started sending their navigators to different continents of the world. The navigators or the mariners started their journey by ship, and they reached into the undiscovered continents of America or Africa or even up to Asia. So Christopher Columbus discovered the sea route to America, Vasco da Gama reached India, and as a result of these geographical exploration, gradually the Europeans were able to establish a connection, a trade relation with these countries. Now, when they were able to establish that trade relation, the economy of these countries greatly benefited. They made great profits as a result of trade with the with the African, South American, North American countries. Now, initially they were doing business with these countries. They were coming to these countries, purchasing various articles, like from India they purchased raw cotton, or they purchased silk, they purchased spices, pearls, and in return of those purchases they gave us gold coins. Now that was a big profit for India also. But after a few years, as time passed, the Britishers or the other European countries realized that these countries had a lot of weaknesses. These Asian or African countries had a lot of weaknesses within them, and they used that opportunity to capture these countries, to colonize these countries. So let us take the example of India for us to understand better. In India, the Britishers started doing business. They set up business centers in Kolkata, Madras and Mumbai, but then they realized that the prince and princesses of India were so much engaged in fighting with each other that they would not be able to give a joint resistance to the British if they attacked India. So they attacked India. They defeated Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, and after that, gradually, one after another, they fought various battles in our country and captured the whole India. After capturing India, we became a typical colony of the British. What is a colony? A colony is a country that becomes the economic tool, the economic plaything in the hand of the powerful countries, the imperialist countries. So we see that the Britishers started buying raw materials from our farmers at a very cheaper rate. They took that raw material back to their country and processed it in their own factories, and then they brought that same raw material to our country and sold it in our markets at a very higher rate. So this time the Britishers or the European countries benefited greatly from this kind of trade, but the colonies like India, Africa, etc. suffered terribly. There was an absolute drain of wealth from the colonies during this period. Now, colonization did not continue forever. After the First World War and then the Second World War, the power of the European countries gradually decreased, because of the terrible losses they had to face. Even though Britain had won the war, but the losses, both economic as well as the manpower that was lost during the First World War and then in the Second World War, was like a massive blow to Britain and other European countries. So this was the opportunity for the colonized countries to fight back. The freedom movement in the colonized countries increased, and as a result of the intense freedom struggle, gradually the colonizers had to give independence to the colonized countries. So between the First World War and the Second World War, a number of countries got independence, and then after the Second World War, again a good number of countries got independence. We got our independence in 1947, just after the Second World War. So this period, when gradually the colonial powers like Britain or other European countries were becoming weaker and weaker, and the colonized countries started asserting their independence, is known as the period of decolonization. That means the end of colonial age. But although colonization ended, the European countries left the Asian and African countries and went back, but their effect continued. The impact of the colonialism was so much that even today we can feel many things that the Britishers had country is continuing as an integral part of our lifestyle. We are not able to overcome those moments, we are not able to overcome those elements of the British rule. So whether it is in our dress or in our food, our culture or the language we speak, there is still a very deep impact of the Britishers. So this can be visible not just in India, but if you go to South America, you will see that the countries are still speaking in Latin because Spain had colonized them. And in Africa also, many countries still have a impact of the French, Italian or the British colonial period. So all the colonized nations still bear the mark of colonization in their life and culture. This period after the colonizers left us is known as so post-colonial is the time when the colonization ended, the colonizer left the colonies and went back to their home countries, but the impact remains as it is in the life of the common people. Now what is post-colonial literature then? Clearly written the definition, you can see it in the screen. Post-colonial literature is the literature produced in the countries that are now colonies of other countries. That means once India was the colony of Britain, so the literature that is produced after the independence of India in our country is post-colonial literature. Similarly, there are some countries which are still under the colonial rule or still under the imperial power of various countries. So the literature produced in those countries which are still under colonization can also be considered as post-colonial. Now here comes a question, a difficulty. There are some countries like America which got independence long ago. America's independence was in the 18th century. So can we really say that America is still writing post-colonial literature? Well, not really, because post-colonial literature has certain identifiable characteristics and some common themes. Whether they are written in India or in Africa or in South America, you will see these common themes present universally in post-colonial literature. So by those themes we can identify whether the literature is post-colonial or not. Gradually in India also we have come out of the shadows of the British rule, and it is not necessary that everything that is written in India is post-colonial. All the English literature, the whole body of English literature that is produced in our country is not necessarily post-colonial. But yes, a good amount of literature has the post-colonial impact in them. So now what are the characteristics, what are the features that make us realize that this particular piece of literature can be considered as post-colonial? As I said, only being written in a country that was colonized once upon a time or that is still colonized cannot be considered post-colonial. It has certain characteristics. So the first characteristics is, as I have mentioned, you can see it in the screen, you can note it down, asserting the cultural identity. Now when the Britishers came to India, I shall be giving the reference to India repeatedly because it is easier for us to relate. So the Britishers came to India, they brought their own culture and they considered their culture far superior to ours. We were the people who sat on the floor and had our lunches and dinners. We were the people who were eating with hands. We were the people dressed in dhoti and chadar, and that is why we were considered far inferior. And they were people eating with knife and fork on a table, so they were superior. So this idea that Britishers or the Europeans had a superior culture and the natives in the colony have an inferior culture left a mark in the life of the people living in the colony. In the post-colonial age, the thinkers, philosophers, writers, activists, they are trying their best to assert the cultural identity of that country. They are trying their best to prove that our culture is in no way inferior, rather, depending on the geography of my land, it is more suitable than your culture. Your culture is for your land, for your area. My culture is for my land, for my area. And that is why asserting cultural identity is a very important theme in post-colonial literature. We will see that these writers are trying to highlight the positive aspects of their culture. They are trying to highlight that what is good in their culture and how that is better than the culture of the colonizers. So this becomes one of the main characteristics, one of the chief characteristics in post-colonial literature, where the writer tries to assert the beauty, the importance of the culture in the of the colonized nation. The second one is resisting colonial stereotyping. So what is colonial stereotyping? Basically, when the Britishers wrote about India, they did two things. Either they presented India as an exotic nation. What is exotic? Exotic is something like a mystical, magical, fairy tale land. The whole country is covered with forest and only tigers and poisonous snakes run about in the streets and roads of India. All the people are basically dressed like either sannyasis or like maharajas. This was the idea that was created by some of the British authors who wrote about India in their writings during the colonial period. Or some other authors tried to present India as a very inferior culture. They tried to show that the Britishers had the burden, which is popularly known as the white man's burden. The Britishers had the burden to civilize the uncivilized Indians and Africans. According to them, we were very inferior in culture. Our culture was not up to the mark, and that is why the Britishers took up the responsibility as a moral responsibility to civilize us, to make us cultured. Now, both this representation of India was wrong, or not just India, any other colony was absolutely wrong. And in order to protest against it, in order to break that stereotype, our Indian writers, or in Africa, the African writers, they are trying their best to show the real picture of their country. The real picture can have good things also and bad things also. There is poverty in India, at the same time there is a very close, compact, warm life in India. So every aspect of Indian life as it is in reality has been presented by these authors, by these dramatists, by these poets, so that they can counter, they can challenge the colonial stereotyping of the colonies by the imperial countries. The next characteristic is the confusion related to language. The language problem is really a big dilemma for the writers of the post-colonial literature. Now, what is the language question? Basically, the colonizers, Britishers, brought their English language with them to India, and they tried to impose that language upon the colonies, the people of the colonies. Now we had to once upon a time we had to adapt the language under the pressure, under the force of the colonial power. But as time passed by, we ourselves became the masters of that language. We adapted the language according to our own tongue. So you have read Kamala Das's introduction, where the poet is very clearly saying that the language is mine. It is English language is no longer a British language for me. It is a language that I speak, in which I can express my thoughts, feelings and sentiments, and I have adapted it. I have changed the language according to my need and my requirement. So it has now become my language. So some authors and some poets think that they should not write in the colonizers' language, in English language or in Latin language, etc., because that will mean that they are still following the colonizers. They have not been able to overthrow the colonial rule or the impact of the colonial rule. So they prefer to write in their regional language, in their mother tongue. But there are some other writers who try to point it out that if you are writing in your mother tongue, obviously the literature of your mother tongue is going to be enriched. There is a fear that the local language, the regional languages are dying out, so you can save your regional language from dying. That is very good. But your writing cannot reach up to the whole world. If you write in Bangla, if you write in Hindi, how can the people sitting in Australia or sitting in Africa read what you are writing? They will not be able to know about India, Indian culture, the true picture of India. So India will still be stereotyped according to the old stories and old novels and old descriptions that were written by the colonizers, the British. According to that, people of the whole world will stereotype India. So if you really want to present the picture of true India, an honest picture of the country, then you will have to write in the English language, because it is a global language. So this is the question, this is the conflict, this is the dilemma of the colonizers' language. Can you overthrow this language and start writing only in your mother tongue, or you should write in the global language so that the global audience should understand what you are trying to say? So these are some of the conflicts, these are some of the issues which you will find in R.K. Narayan's writings, in Raja Rao's writing, Mulk Raj Anand, Kamala Das. Most of the writers in post-independence India have faced or have dealt with these characteristics of post-colonial writing. Now coming to some of the common themes that you will find across the post-colonial literature, be it from Africa or from South America or from India. So we have a Chilean poet in our syllabus, Pablo Neruda. We have Indian poets and dramatists. We have African poets and dramatists. So various countries which had once upon a time faced colonization, the themes in their writing has a similarity. First theme that is quite common is the struggle for independence. Now the colonial writer, the writers of the post-colonial literature, they are very proud of their freedom struggle. It is by the hard struggle for freedom finally these countries have gained independence from the dominating powers, from the oppressive imperialist powers. So while throwing out the British from India, the Indians had to shed their blood. Similarly, in order to end the Spanish rule in Chile, or in order to end the British rule in the African countries, the people had to suffer, the people had to die, they had to lose everything, including their life. And that struggle for independence is a matter of great pride and honor for many of the writers of post-colonial literature, and that is why it comes as a recurrent theme in the post-colonial literature, the struggle for independence. Next comes immigration. Immigration, see, when a foreigner comes to a new country, he brings his culture with him, he brings his habits and his language with him. So when the colonizer, like the Britishers, came to India or the Spanish came to Chile, they brought their culture with them. Gradually, that culture, what was good in their culture, some good aspects of their culture, started entering into our day to day lives, and that is the effect of immigration. Next is the question of national identity. Every country has its own identity, has its own culture that has shaped through a long history, a long heritage. The Indian culture can date back to almost 5000 years, and even before that, rather beyond that, since the Indus Valley civilization. So we know, starting from the Indus Valley civilization, then there was the Aryans who came to India, the Vedic civilization. After that, the different empires started coming up, the Mauryan Empire, the Gupta Empire, the Rajput dynasties. After that, the Delhi Sultanate started, then the Mughals came. So as a result of these rules, these dynasties, these ages of Indian history, we have developed a distinct characteristic, a distinct character in our country. So that identity, that character is always highlighted, celebrated in the post-colonial literature, because it is an integral part of our life. The mixed civilization, the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, that means the mixture of the Hindu and the Muslim cultures of India, has given an unique flavor to our life, an unique culture to our life. So celebrating that uniqueness of India, that unique culture of India, becomes a part of the post-colonial literature. Finally, we are coming to the question of hybridity. Hybridity means again a mixture. You have heard the term hybrid, like two kinds of fruits are mixed together to form a third kind, or two kind of animal genes are mixed together to form a particular type. That is hybridity in the idea of science. But what is hybridity in culture? Hybridity means a mixture of cultures. Today, we, the new generation who are living in India, we have not seen the colonial rule in our country, but the effect of the colonial rule is very much there in our lives. We would not prefer to wear a dhoti or a kurta or a sari when we are jumping around in the trains and buses. We would be rather more comfortable in a shirt and a pant. In our food, we are as comfortable with the chow meins and pizzas as we are with the typical Indian chaats and chops. So our life is a hybrid life, a mixture of the British colonial impact as well as the Indian typical identity. We can neither totally leave our Indian history behind, nor we can leave the British habits behind. They have become so integral part of our life. They have mixed in our habits in such a way that it is almost impossible to do away with any part of it. So that is why we are proceeding in life, we are going ahead in life, taking a mixed culture, taking a mixed heritage, and this is called the concept of hybridity, which is again an important theme in the post-colonial literature. So I have given a very brief overview of post-colonial literature. With this background, we will proceed to the various texts included in our syllabus. Thank you.